Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Newsgram. We begin today with a quote from the Greek mathematician Archimedes. "Give me a place to stand and a lever long enough, and I will move the world."
He was a brilliant man. Thinking about it, though, I realized that the idea of moving the world, truly moving the world, you need to have something that strikes a number of people and that they really relate to. And I think poems and songs have that. So I think that's a better way of moving the world.
That is Steve Wachtel, author of the book Sandlot Poet. We all have our own ways of moving the world, and for Steve, it all began back in 1976. The year another famous New Yorker released his now classic album, Turnstiles, featuring the hit song New York State of Mind. Of course, I'm talking about William Martin Joel. Billy Joel chose to use songs to move the world, and he's been doing that since the early 70s. Steve has chosen to move the world through poetry, and I found some interesting parallels between these two New Yorkers. Billy Joel was born in the Bronx, and he grew up on Long Island. Steve Wachtel was born in Brooklyn, and he also grew up on Long Island.
I was very fortunate to be in the Farmingdale School District in Long Island and had very fine teachers there who emphasized writing and expression. That really was very helpful to me because that was something that's inbred in my, I think, to some extent.
It was there and then when Steve decided he wanted to be a writer. But it wasn't from the seat of a piano bench. It was on a diamond in a New York City park. The moment was captured here very nicely in his poem, A Different Glory.
I was a terrible little leaguer. One hit in 3 years. But I stayed eager to try and stay with my peers, some of whom went on to Sandlot glory days, were looked upon as gods to be praised for their ability to strike a round ball with a round bat. Truly a feat denied those like me, not an athlete all-star, in fact. But today, I've made some hits to cheers, at least in my mind, in a different sport that fits me better, where I'm inclined to weave words in my peculiar way into rhymes and schemes that together have their say, pleasing myself and others, it seems. So I'll never be in the Hall of Fame, and no Frostian all-star, I know it. At least now I'm in the game, truly and finally, a Sandlot Poet.
Sandlot Poet is the title of his new book, and it says a lot about him.
So Sandlot Poet to me is someone who has some ability, but is not like Robert Frost, for example, or those in the Hall of Fame as far as I'm concerned. So it's someone who basically can put words together to please himself and others. And, well, they'll become famous perhaps, they will have their say.
I love that. We don't have to be famous, but sometimes we just need to be heard. And speaking of famous poets, Walt Whitman was also born on Long Island until his family moved to Brooklyn. Was it New York that inspired his introspection and subsequently the quote, "Let your soul stand cool and composed before a million universes"? Well, I don't know, but it was definitely the inspiration for Steve's poem, Morning Becomes Electric.
I wake each early morning to the song of a cardinal, the song of a blue jay, the twittering of their performing, giving sweetness to the start of all my many hopes for the day. The rising sun pauses too to listen. All its harmony for that short space. And I stretch, feeling old bones become new again. Gray hairs glisten, and all things stolen by time I bemoaned, briefly return, and my life is graced.
Yeah, I can personally relate to that one because it's how most of my days begin, with a cup of coffee in the great outdoors. What's your inspiration, and how do you move the world? Doesn't have to be with a classic album, a world-famous volume of poetry, or the ability to hit a major league home run. Whatever you do on a daily basis, as long as it's done with the right intention, is probably having a positive impact. Steve Wachtel said it best in his poem, Archimedes.
Archimedes, master mathematician, transported by his theory, proclaimed, "Give me a lever, a place to stand, and I'll move the world." Move the world? What a notion. Hard enough to move yourself, let alone this spinning top of billions. But Archimedes had a wonderful madness. It's his method that was wrong. Move the world? Forget a lever. dare to use a poem or a song.
Words to live by. Sandlot Poet is a book of 64 free verse poems that will lift your spirits and put a smile on your face. Gentle observations and the human experience written from a New York state of mind. And that will do it for this edition of Newsgram from webtalkradio.com.